Women make up 70% of the healthcare workforce, but only 20% of its leadership. On Her Story, we'll explore the careers of bold and influential women from Silicon Valley to Capitol Hill and learn how they've overcome the odds. This is Her Story, a program where we explore what's beyond the glass ceiling.
In today's episode, we shine a light on the multifaceted journey of working mothers and the remarkable resilience they demonstrate in balancing their professional careers with the demands of motherhood. We'll hear from Dr. Janice Nevin, President and CEO of ChristianaCare, Chiquita Brooks-LaSure, Administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and Cathy Jacobson, President and CEO of Froedtert Health. Let's hear from Dr. Janice Nevin first.
And you mentioned family. I've been married for more than 31 years. The two of us have managed to navigate two careers, raise two children, and I've been very fortunate that I've had a partner along the way. I always have an allergic reaction when people talk about work-life balance, because I look back, there was nothing balanced, and you give and take depending on what's needed, what the circumstances are. So this phrase of work-life well-being, I talk about. I've learned how to integrate work into life in a way that is meaningful and purposeful and impactful. I do, we all have choices along the way, and sometimes I think we forget that, but we all have choices. And I can remember earlier in my career, I made a choice that I was not going to pursue going up the academic ladder. I was an assistant professor for a very long time. I'm now a professor. I got there eventually, but I made a very intentional choice that I had young children, but I was also a new residency director. I was growing my leadership with some national organizations. And so for me, it was, well, what's the most important for me in my life currently? And I prioritize, what am I willing to say, this can wait, or maybe even this comes off the list. But for women, particularly for young women in particular, remember you always have, you can make choices. You can choose what's important to you about sort of how you spend your time and energy when it comes to your career.
Chiquita Brooks-LaSure reflects on becoming a parent and how this helped her understand the balance between work and personal life. Let's hear from her next.
I really had in my life many people who helped me to get here. And I would just, when I look back and think about how many bosses I had who were incredibly instrumental in helping me to grow as a person, helping me to understand public policy and the work life that we have, and just really helping me to understand how to balance all of those things with being a person, which I think is important in terms of this role of really understanding what life is like. One of the things that I focus on a lot is, as people know, is maternal health. And I am a mother, and a lot of my expertise in that area really comes from being a parent, some of the challenges that I've gone through, but also talking to other parents and realizing, I didn't experience some of these challenges because of my own walk in life. So I would say when I think about how I got here, what really stands out is how many really supportive women and men, but many women really helped me. I learned partly by observation, really seeing them in action. Some people like Speaker Pelosi, I would say, I really watched her and how she conducted herself. And it's not that, we had so many direct conversations, but then other people like my boss at Ways and Means, Sibel Bjorklund, Nancy Ann, Jean Lambrew, Mark Miller at the beginning of my career, just to name a few. I think that you learn so much from observation and also more direct mentorship. I won't pretend that I have it all figured out. And I would start by saying, I think that so often people in general, women in particular, and moms start 3 times, really feel like we have to go through these kinds of challenges alone. there is a lot of wisdom in talking to people. And I still, honestly, last weekend, I called up a friend with older kids and said, here's what's going on. Any advice you have for me? And I think that so often I see us struggling, but we are not the first people who had to figure out how to manage work-life balance. And I think so often, again, we think we have to solve these problems ourselves. My own suggestion and advice is that I think really understanding that being a parent can actually make you more efficient and better. And I was talking about this with one of my team who also is a mother. And, it's true. I think I'm much more ruthless about my time than I used to be. I have much more like, is this actually a critical conversation? Do we really need to have this? Is there a more efficient way to accomplish this? And I think a lot of that came from just knowing that every moment I am choosing my time between the people who, the 6,000 people that work at this agency, the Hill, the stakeholders, and being at home with my family. And so you get a little more like, I think, precise with your time. So, and I say that to say that I think so often we think of our, whatever the things are about ourselves as a liability. They don't have to be. That said, it is incredibly difficult sometimes to manage, the all of the things that are going on in our lives. And I think really making sure you can, to the extent that you can, have supports around you, whether they're family members, whether it's friends, support. That is critical. And I think also it ideally, right, a lot of that comes from employers. I try to create an environment at CMS. I will go out of my way to mention that I like to take my daughter to the bus. I don't do that just because I want to do those things, but I want to make parents at CMS feel like it is okay to say, I'm going to be, I need this meeting to start at 9:15 rather than 9 o'clock because I want to be able to take my child to school. That's okay. That does require a level of grace from employers and colleagues often, right, too, understanding that, we can't always accommodate everybody's issues, but often we can. It's okay to start that meeting at 9:15. It's okay to not have meetings after 6. Sometimes there's an emergency, but, I think that that is a little bit of the advice that I would give.
Up next, Cathy Jacobson highlights the need for employers and colleagues to provide support and flexibility for working parents.
Then I got married and I had a family and I had a child, and my husband and I were working full time, and we came back to work, even though now I don't want 1,000 people reporting to me. I'm in that staff position at Rush. And after about a year, the two of us looked at each other and said that we don't like this. This just isn't working, for our family. We're spending every weekend just trying to get our stuff done, and we're not spending enough time with our baby and all of that kind of stuff. And at that time, I was the one, because of the role that I had versus what my husband was doing at the time, that negotiated my part-time job. So again, I don't have a ton of people reporting to me, but I'm still reporting inside the C-suite. And I had a couple key, cost, turnaround projects, assigned to me. So I went in and I gave them the plan. I'm going to work 3 days a week. I'll work long days, but I need 2 days off. Take a reduction of pay. This is how you're going to divide up my job, all these kind of things. And they, and I said, if I can't, because I think I was one of the first women who ever did that, at the executive level at Rush, then I'm going to have to choose to step off until I can find something else, that I can do. And I would say great for me. I would say great for them, that they took me up on that offer. And I was able to do that, for probably the next 4.5 years, had 2 more children during that time. During that time, the CFO did turn over at Rush, and they did approach me the first time. I'm pregnant with my second child. I am part-time. I'm like, yeah, be kidding me. I'm not, I can't, step up and do that. So I passed on it. Well, they had to come back again, 2 or 3 years later, because of the financial difficulties. We had a new CEO by that time who had been in that C-suite, someone I was working with, Dr. Larry Goodman, and they had to come in and ask about the CFO job again. And I turned them down twice because I had 3 children, 5, 3, and 1. I kind of liked my part-time gig. It was working really well until I had a very wise woman in our EEOC department, because Rush runs at university also as well, who came to my office one day and just sat down and she just said, "You are going to be so ticked off when they hire somebody for this job that cannot do it as well as you do. Let's go figure out how we're going to get this done." And so what I did is I negotiated to come back full-time 4 days. Again, long days in the office. Let me work at home on Fridays. If I can just be at home, I'll work at home. I have to tell you, life wasn't as easy as virtual, today. I had a fax machine, all of these kind of things. I could do email. And I worked at home, for a day. And that's how we balanced it. But I will tell you, that lasted for a year, because I'm still working 5 days a week. And my husband got promoted at the same time and had an international job and was flying all over the United States. It still wasn't, working for us. So after about a year of me being the CFO, we decided he should step off at that point in time. And he didn't feel like he could balance a part-time schedule. And so he just retired at that point in time and stayed home with our kids. And so my son was 2, so they're 2, 4, and 6, by that time. I still stayed home a day a week, which worked great because I think it was 100 times more effective, doing that, and more productive on those days. But he stayed home during that entire time. Which, back in, 2003, 2004, there wasn't a lot of guys doing that. He was very fortunate that another colleague that he had at work did that about the same time. So he had somebody to be together with, joined the PTO, did all the coaching, all of that kind of stuff. But I think what it really demonstrates is that we know it, okay? The childbearing family thing is different when you're the mom. It is different, no matter what anybody says, it is different. They do look at you differently, meaning leaders in an organization when you're of childbearing age, once you get, and especially once you get married, are you coming back? Are you not coming back? I have had my boss turn to me and say, "I'm not so much worried just about you, but you have 4 female directors. What are you guys going to do when you all start having babies?" Not kidding. Okay. These are the conversations. If it's not going on, if they're not saying it, it's going on in someone's head. They're always thinking about that, whether what's going to happen to the team if you decide not to come back. And then when you do have a family, obviously it's something that you have to balance. So what did you give up and what did you compromise? Obviously, I did pass on promotions. During that time, I was part-time and all of those different types of things. You can tell from my resume, I'm not a person who moved around a lot. To move up, I moved up internally and waited for the right positions to come because I didn't want to move my family, all over the place for my job. I did it once, and that was traumatic enough to do it once. When my kids were teenagers, early teenagers is when we made the move to Milwaukee. And yeah, every single day there's something that you give up that you missed, at home. It worked great for my husband and I because on weekends he wanted some time off and all I wanted to do is be with my kids, so that's how I spent all my time. So what I would say happens is that your job gets all of you when you're at work and your family gets all of you when you're at home with them. And there isn't a lot of time for you, during that time period. Every once in a while, and you've got to have a really good core group of friends that are going to be your friends, no matter if you can be in contact with them all the time. I'm so lucky. My best friends are still with me, from college. And now we do see each other a lot more, but you just need to know that during that journey, during that time, that there's not going to be a lot of you time, a lot of me time, in that. Luckily, they're all out of the house now. I still crave them every day. We always do, our kids, but they're all young adults now and everything. But that gives us time, to go out and refresh and be able to do things. So that's at least my journey. Not everybody has to go through that and balancing family and all those different types of things. And another key piece of advice that I always give people is if you're blessed enough to walk this life with a partner, make sure you get a partner who's going to let you be you. And 30 plus years ago, I was amazingly lucky to find that person. And it's worked. It's worked for us. And now, that my kids are out of the house, my husband gets to come with me, every once in a while, and we get to extend every once in a while. So you get that break, in there also as well. So the same daughter, who at 16 was screaming at me because I could not take off of work to take her to Chicago to pick out a prom dress, because of course she couldn't find one in Milwaukee that was adequate. So she had to go to Chicago, absolutely screaming at me. Probably one of the worst parental moments, that I can ever remember. That same daughter, by the way, is an accountant, works in a big 4 accounting firm doing what I did. So that, just tells you. But when she was in business school at the University of Wisconsin, she called me. She was so excited. She's like, oh, this is so great. She got to go to some little business retreat, something, that the school was doing. And she goes, oh, we had these 3 CEOs come in and talk to us, and 2 of them were women, and it was just great. And one of them was talking about the trade-offs that she makes with her family and, what she has to give up. And she goes, I went up to her after that, and she goes, Mom, I went up and I talked to her and I said, you don't realize that your children are watching you every single day and that they're learning from you. She goes, I did that with my mom, and I have learned so much. And I'm, wow, baby. Woo. It was one of those moments where, so if you have a 16-year-old screaming at you, today, because you can't be with them in the moment and in the minute, they're watching you. They know what you're doing. They know they are loved, and they will come back around. That was when she told me that she just went into business school undecided. And when she told me she was going to be in accounting, she's just explaining, how excited she is. I go, you do know I did that, right? It was just like she was oblivious to it, but they watch, they do come back around. So sometimes you got to wait a couple of years, but they do come back around.
Through their inspiring stories, we are reminded of the strength and dedication of working mothers and the importance of supporting them in their journey. As we conclude this episode, let us celebrate the remarkable achievements of working mothers and recognize the ongoing need for greater understanding and support in creating a more inclusive and empowering environment for all.